Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Thursday. It's May 30th. This will be our chart lesson for today, and this is going to wrap up our week. No chart lessons on Fridays. Um, we had some movement today. Really, this looks like a range day. We pretty much traded. We traded outside the overnight highs and lows, but just briefly, and then the rest of the day we pretty much traded inside those levels. So. Really, we had a little trend up and a little trend back down. And notice that there's two legs down. Oops. You can never grab the one you want. There's your first, basically your first leg. I still grabbed the wrong line. I don't know why this is so hard to always get the right one. Anyway, there's your first leg, and then you'd measure down from there, and you can see it's basically a perfect measured leg. There's actually two legs in this one, and you can measure each one of those as well. And there's leg one, and then that would be leg two. We went a little further on that, but really it was a measured leg almost to the tick from this first move down. Then there's your correction. Center of the pattern starts here, and then another leg down. So two legs down, and then we've been correcting since then. So and basically we had two legs up as well. Just to show you that, you measure this first leg up. Needs to go a tad higher. And then your next leg up would be right there. And generally when you don't make those targets, you can see we got real close, but we didn't quite make it. And generally when you do not make those targets, you'll get a pretty good move in the other direction. So, and you can see that's what's happening today. I'm doing this a little earlier today. It's just a little after 2. It's about 2:30 right now. So it's past our cutoff time. So I want to go ahead and get this done and get out of here to a little earlier hour today. I've got some other things going on that personally I need to take care of today, so I'm going to leave a little bit early. But let me back out. We'll talk about the trades, and then we'll wrap the day up, and we'll wrap up the week. Notice that there's the blue channel working higher, and then we kind of went a little flatter. That one's a little bit steep. Then we went a little flatter, which is the red channel. That one's a little hard to see. Let me make it a little darker. And somebody made a comment about all the trend lines on the chart yesterday. I hate to, it does kind of clutter it, but I wanted to show you what I see and what I was looking at. So notice here we got what looks like an overshoot up here, and then we bounced on up and sold off. We never really got a close outside on this red or brown channel. Notice on the blue, when you get a break here, a move, there's really two legs up to a new high, and then we sold off. So you can see there's actually a little double swing there in leg one, and then you pulled back and you got your second leg, and they're basically two measured legs, and then it sold off. So it was hard to know if this was an overshoot or not, but it does tend to fit here early on those first couple swings. So if you move it up here, it still fits, but then your midline does not quite fit as well. Put that in the middle, it just doesn't fit as well. I really think it's down here where I originally had it this morning, and you got a little bit of an overshoot here, and it does tend to fit well like that. You can see that. So anyway, that's the way I was looking at it. Just trying to get that back in the right spot, perfectly centered. But anyway, let's talk about the trades. We'll back out just a hair more where these bars are easier to see for you, and we'll talk about the trades here. When I came in, we already had this first leg up, and we're just kind of trending sideways across here. We had this little drop down. Notice that you got a new high. It's slightly higher than that one, so pull back first entry, then second entry. Right off the trend line, it confirms it. Nice signal bar, second entry long. You want to take that every time. Easy trade. We actually have another second entry here. I like this setup, but I'm just a little afraid of it. Probably should at least be green. But I really didn't want to mark it. It's just there's a lot of stem there, and we actually closed back below the support resistance area. So it is a second entry, but really you can count these double tops both ways, and that's not much of a correction. It looks like that's sideways there. So um, I figured it'd probably be better off to wait on a higher low and count that as your second entry. And and notice this is a much better setup, and look how it took off this time where it didn't take off here. People just weren't quite sure about it. But you could have entered there. It's not a perfect signal bar. It's still a second entry because that's a new high, first entry, second entry. And, every once in a while people have debates about whether this is a first entry here or a second entry. You can count double tops both ways. The idea is to look at the context of what's going on and decide. Anyway, you could count it both ways, either, no matter what. But whether or not you want to take this as a first or second entry would depend on the context. Here, I'm not crazy about the context. We weren't back at the high, and we did break lower, and we made a lower high, and so there's a good chance we could turn down from there. And so you got to be careful with that one. So I think you're better off to wait, and when you got this further confirmation here in a better signal bar, then that was the better place to enter. And you can tell that everybody else thought that too, because look how prices actually move on now when they didn't move very far here. People were just not convinced that was a good setup. So then we move on up here. You come back first entry, and you get a second entry right here. This is not a perfect signal bar either, but it's relatively small, so it's relatively low risk. It's more bullish than bearish, but it's also a double test. Notice we made that low. We came in, tested it right at this point, actually three times here, and then we tested it again right here. And this is a second entry. So it's a double test. It is also off the key entry point and confirms it. So I like that setup. You get a higher low here, which looks very much like this right here. But it doesn't take off this time, and that's concerning. So even though you got a failed second entry short right here, I made it green just so I wouldn't forget to talk about it. I'm not crazy about it. It is a failed second entry short, but you got a lot of overlap right there, and that's basically a perfect doji, and that's a perfect doji. So when you get three or more bars and one of them's a doji, you just got to be real careful with those. So. Okay, I had a little distraction there. I've been gone a little bit. I know you guys won't be able to notice it probably because I paused this thing, but I believe I was talking about this trade right here. Failed second entry short, but notice how you have all that congestion. You really could look at this like a breakout pullback, but now you're right into the over high resistance. Probably not a good, and you're still really going sideways. There is a little bit of a breakout pullback, and you can see that trend line still holding, but if it does break higher, you don't know that you're going to get through here, and notice it doesn't go far and it becomes a failed breakout. Generally, I'd say you might want to try to go short here. Generally, you'd probably want to wait on a lower high at this point too, since this is a uptrend. But with this being, you don't want to go short right into the EMA and that trend line. So you just almost have to wait on the lower high here, and then you're right into the support area. And you don't want to be going short there. You see how it bounced. It ends up turning down, but you don't know that ahead of time. It could have turned up and went right back up again. And you really just don't get a chance to enter this. There is an entry right here that's kind of a third touch, and it is a big bearish bar, but look where you're going short. Way down here, there's really two legs there already. You're way away from the EMA, and if you were to draw this on the other side, you're really going short right in that. It does push on through, but you just don't know that ahead of time. So unfortunately, you don't get a chance to enter till down here. And I would have liked this one better if it broke higher, but it's still a first entry, and then it tried to go higher and turn back down. So there's a hidden second entry there, and that was a pretty nice move on down. And your lows are way down here. And at this point, you have to figure prices are probably going to try to fill the gap. Notice this is where the open was. Here's where the close was yesterday. So your gap is still way on down there. We end up getting a break before that, but at this point, this is still in play. And so you would expect prices to try to keep working lower, which they do keep working lower, but you get a little correction here first. And that's the problem. When you start to get away from the EMA for a long period of time, it's going to come back soon. And you can see it, that last move down, now it comes back to the EMA before it heads lower again. You get a little correction here. You still would be thinking short at this point. Notice that's the first break of this fairly strong, tight trend here. You get a lower high here, but your signal bar is just not very good. It's a perfect doji. So, but then you finally get a failed second entry long here, and it actually went higher and turned and went out the other side. But you could almost wait for the only problem is if you did wait for this one to close and then drop your it skipped over and dropped so fast you would have had to wait for it to come back, and I don't know if I'd want to do that. So really your best entry on this one would be one tick below this bar when it broke higher and it starts turning down. Put your sell stop there and see if it'll go on through, which it does, and you would have been in that trade and already probably out. Or you could have used a limit order and let it come back here, but I'd be leery of that, especially since we bounced so quickly there close to that low. You notice we made a little lower low, so you're still making lower lows and lower highs. But you do have your break here and two legs down now, so I'd want to play this as high up here as I could. And notice we do push on down for another leg down. Then we just went sideways here. When you started seeing these lows here, I would have drawn this trend line across here like I did, and that would have kept you from. This would have been probably the only one you might have considered still going short on. But once you started going sideways here, I wouldn't even. I really don't even like that one. It's just a first entry after we've already bounced down here multiple times without going very far. You've already had a break here and two legs, two swings down. So that's, if anything, I might be looking for a trap here. But it just ends up going sideways. Just stay out of that. And then notice you finally get a little failed breakout and a chance to go short right off that midline. And you really wouldn't have known if this midline was good yet or not, because this is how I found this. I drew it off these lows and drug it up, and then I just found the middle point. And you can see how it gapped over right there too, which usually tells you you're in the right place. Of course, you wouldn't have had that gap when you had this. So really the reason you would play this short is not because it's off that midline, because a lot of people probably wouldn't even have that yet until you're really good at drawing these trend lines and trend channels. But it's a failed breakout out of this little trading range. And you figure prices are going to snap back again and maybe even go lower. But instead they actually go higher here. But that's, you still would have got a scalp out of that. Comes up, and where does it turn down? Right where you would have copied that line and drug it up here. Turns down perfectly, closing inside of it. That one is tempting, but I'd wait on a lower high here, which comes here. And this is also a second entry short here. Well, technically it's not, but you could almost look at this like a double bottom here. And so you're moving up first entry, second entry. Technically it's not really a second entry. But you've also got a trend line working up here, and you get a close outside, new high. So just wait on that lower high right there. There's a failed second entry long right here, which generally becomes a reversal pattern, but we're still on this side of the EMA. So I'd sit tight on that one. It's a real small bar, and it's probably going to trap some people. It's one you could argue for, but I'd probably sit tight on that one. This was your better entry point, right? The lower high. Yeah, but you could argue for that one, and then off it goes. And where does it come? It comes right back down and bounces there again twice. I don't think you want to go long there because you got this trend line working down. You do get a break, and you get a second entry short right there. Notice that low, first entry, and then second entry, and that's a nice bearish bar. You know, for a couple of days there, I was having some real trouble with my trend lines or my signal bars, but today they've all been good. Notice you get a lower high right here, another great signal bar, but you're really back in this range, and it's just dangerous going. You could actually move that down now because you got a close right there, and you can see it actually tends to fit better there now. And so you don't want to be going short into a 3-bar matching low right there on a lower high. So, but it pushes on down, pulls back, gives you that failed second entry long. It pretty much confirms that trend line. So I like going short right there. And that would, and notice that you got to figure you're probably headed on down to fill the, fill that gap, and that would have filled the gap when it got to here. And it actually pushes on down to the back down to here, to the lower trend channel line before it bounces. And you actually get a failed second entry short right here. There's actually one more little bounce, tick higher right there at the trend line, but you got a 2-bar matching low. You've already had a break of your trend line here and a new low in place. So I really don't think you're long, you've been away from the EMA a while. You could consider we're probably headed down here, but I still don't think I would take this trade right here. It's another one that you could maybe argue to be green, but there's been too many good trades to want to take that trade. The reversal here, we're not through the EMA, which is generally what you want to see. So I'm not crazy about this one. I did mark it green because we're probably going to head at least to the midline and maybe up to the trend line again. But you actually get a little better move here when it pushes on through and pulls back and then turns up. If it breaks above that bar, you're probably going to go on higher, and that's what happens there. It does pull, and that actually takes you into 2 o'clock. It does pull back here before going higher again, but that would have been the last trade you'd want to take here. This is getting too far into. There is a second entry long, but that I'd still look at that. I doubt I'd take that second entry long. Look at that little trend line working down through there, and there's no break of it or anything. I don't think I would take that even though it's a second entry long there. We're still in a downtrend here, and there's no reason to really look for a long unless you're coming off these lows and got some kind of reversal pattern or something. Would have been a nice trade, but you don't know that ahead of time. So anyway, that's what I saw today. Back out again where you can just see the big picture, but you can see the big picture. This is pretty much a range day. And you can see how prices are below, above, below, above, below, above, below, above, below. When you're swinging above and below the EMA is what I'm talking about there, above and below. You're constantly above and below the EMA. Generally, you can trade that both ways. You want to kind of stay with the overall bias, which early on this is up. And of course, this is an uptrend. You can see the EMA is mostly pointed up and prices are mostly above it. And then it's down pretty good, and then it's mostly sideways the rest of the time. And then now you're mostly up again since maybe 2:30. Notice how we've been above the EMA and it's pointing up, straight up again. So when you're swinging back and forth above and below that EMA, and the overall picture is kind of a range day, you can trade it both ways. You want to kind of stay with the current bias if you can, which here was mostly down, but you can trade it both ways, so just keep that in mind. Anyway, that's going to do it for today. That's going to wrap up our week. I don't think there's anything else I wanted to discuss today, so I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it Monday. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.